All right. Good morning, class. Nice to see you all today. Today is, for this recording, will be the second Sunday of Lent. And we are having our conversation about our word of the day. And just like last week, this is a word I haven't told you all anything about ahead of time. And this is sort of a big word that when I first say it, you may think like, well, I don't know if I've heard that before, but we have actually read it in some of the stuff we've been reading this past year. So the word of the week is righteousness. Righteousness. So I wonder if any of you have a guess of what that word means or when we maybe have heard it. Riley, looks like you'd like to say something.
I think righteousness. So in school, me and Scarlett are learning how to break up words to find their meaning.
Love it.
And I know, so righteous or yeah.
Right.
So basically, righteousness means like very right.
Yes, well, the word right, if you look at it in the chat, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and read the verse that I put in there? We've read from the Sermon on the Mount some this year, but Matthew, I'm going to have you read. It's Matthew, of course, so Matthew, of course, has to read any time that we read from Matthew. Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. Why don't you read that for us?
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for
righteousness,
for they will be filled.
Thank you. All right, so you see when you look at the word righteousness, the first 5 letters are the word right. Like, you're right. If you're having a disagreement with someone and they're like, you're right. That means that you were the one that was correct, right? Right, I just said right. So Sam, what do you think when you hear righteousness? What would you say for a definition of that?
Well, I would say that righteousness is basically being good, basically.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good definition of it. Pastor Laura, when she and I were talking about this word of the week, she described it as right living. And I can give you an example of this. I want you to think about what are some of the things that are rules at your house, things that everybody is just kind of expected to do, that are just sort of like basic expectations. Scarlett, do you have an example of something like that?
Yes, I would like to say I'm also recording too. I have screen recorders.
All right.
And second, one rule in our house is, what was it again? Oh yeah, no standing on furniture, like standing on a couch.
That is a pretty good rule. Ollie, can you think of any rules at your house, things that are just kind of like?
No eating on furniture except like chairs and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you are allowed to sit down at the table for meals, right? I'm just kidding. So here's a question for you. I want you to raise your hand if you follow every rule at your house all the time, 100% of the time. 100% of the time, every single rule, every single time. All right. Well, Ollie says she does. I don't think I could raise my hand on that. So what are some, Meryl, can you give an example? Maybe, I don't want to like put you on the spot too much, but like what's a rule that's maybe a little bit hard to follow sometimes? Meryl, do you have an example of a rule that's maybe, okay, you don't, that's fine. Well, so, but here's my question. So do your parents love you even when you don't follow the rules all the time? Your parents still love you? Mm-hmm. Riley, what did you want to say? Kind of it. I bet they actually do. I bet your parents still love you even if you don't follow the rules all the time. So your parents' love doesn't depend on you doing the right thing all the time, but since you love your parents, you still try to do the right thing most of the time, right? You know, like maybe so. Well, this is sort of the same thing with righteousness in the Bible. Righteousness really means following what God wants us to do. There's another verse in the Bible that talks about seek God's kingdom and God's righteousness, and then everything else will be taken care of, basically. So righteousness, like Sam was saying, is following the rules we're supposed to follow, but we do that not because we need to do that for God to love us, but because when you love someone, you try to do the right thing and to get along with what they have asked you to do. So that's our word of the week.